And we're back for another March Madness Tournament of Champions group stage match. In today's match, Team Build Phase will be playing Baron Mordo by Robert Geller and Patrick Lenehan's Black Widow. Though it was not shown in the video, Baron Mordo won the dice roll. For those of you that don't remember, Baron Mordo took first place at the San Diego tournament, and Black Widow was prominently featured in Scoop League. My remark to Joe at the beginning of this match was, get ready to not have any fun, and that is kind of the way Baron Mordo plays. My attempt throughout this game, here revealing my hand, is to thoroughly destroy Black Widow's ability to muster anything of value on the board. And that opening hand definitely facilitates that game plan taking place. So on turn 1, Predator ship is rowed and Arnim Zola is recruited. This will result in a discard of a Falcon on Black Widow's side of the board. Formation leaves Zola in the front row and Mordo in the back row. Entering main phase, Mordo activates a blue to force another discard from Black Widow. So at this point, Black Widow's opening hand of 7 cards is still just 7 cards, even following the turn 1 draw. Melinda May and Captain America have hit the KO pile, and Widow gains her first experience by rowing a helicarrier on turn 1, then recruiting a shield agent. The agent proc results in the top card of the deck staying on the top of the deck. At this point in the game, Joe and I have played something like 8 games in a row. All of the Mordo games were piloted by Joe. This was the first one I played, and I realized Mordo's power says discard a random card. The entire night we were allowing the player targeted by Mordo to select the card discarded. And even in that weaker form, Mordo did quite well. Black Widow recruits a plasma gun onto the agent that was played on turn 1, and then plays Loyal Soldiers twice. This gives Widow a pretty decent board presence, but decimates her opening hand. The shield agent then declares an attack into Zola, who immediately dies. Widow, with her +2 counters, is sufficient to get into Mordo, who takes a stun. In the video, I merely put a wound on Mordo for ease, but he was stunned at that point of the game. Turn 2, rows a yellow resource, and then recruit Zemo, immediately going into the main phase, sowing Distrust, and removing Kane from Black Widow's hand. This brings Mordo up to 3 experience. Then a discard from hand for Mordo's blue ability causes Baron Mordo to hit level 2 on turn 2. Because of the double use of Loyal Soldiers on turn 1, Black Widow is out of reach from Baron Mordo, so the shield agent is cleared off the board instead. Now, the options available to Widow at this point aren't great. She does gain another experience by rowing a Sanctum Sanctorum and is able to attack into Zemo to clear him off the board, but card advantage is real. Rowing a Vault and then recruiting Zola causes Widow to discard Phil Coulson, a follow-up recruit of Baron Mordo, and there is enough of an attack to get to Black Widow and team attack her down for her first wound. So at this point, both MCs have 1 wound, and Widow is sitting at 2 experience. Now the Quinjet does offer a glimmer of hope. This will allow Widow to get into the back row and actually put attacks into my protected main character, as well as making her defense sufficiently difficult for Mordo to not be able to stun her. However, lacking any additional pump, the level 1 Widow is not going to be big enough to go into Mordo, and Zola is cleared off the board with no effects from either player. Going into turn 4, a resource is rowed face down, and Ronan enters play. Widow has nothing in hand, so Ronan has nothing to target. Even with Ronan in play, I have no way to get big enough to deal with a level 1 Widow plus the Quinjet. Going into Widow's turn 4, a helicarrier comes down into play, and this gives Widow the necessary experience to level up, which she is all too excited to do. However, Baron Mordo's Hex prevents that from taking place. So somewhat frustratingly, Widow is only able to recruit a Falcon and not get her level 2 version out. A flying team attack is then declared into Baron Mordo. There are no answers in hand to deal with the attack, and Baron Mordo takes his second wound, stunning, which removes Hex from the board and allows Widow to level up. At this point, Widow has no attacks left and passes turn. Turn 5, Mordo rows another yellow resource and recruits Miss America. No cards in hand for Widow, so Mordo is going to be able to kind of have his way with this board. The obvious play here is that one of the yellows that is showing is going to get flipped to pay for Mordo's level 2 power, and Black Widow will again be reduced to her level 1 stat block, which is exactly what happens. Build a Better World is played from hand by Mordo to recur that yellow in case it's necessary again, and then Miss America declares an attack into Black Widow plus a power-up which gives her exactly the 7 attack necessary to stun Widow. However, the response is to burn one of the helicarriers to level 1 Widow power and sting Miss America, which strips her of her green counter and leaves her small enough that she gets stunned without stunning Widow. Mordo then declares an attack into Captain America, which resolves with Captain America gaining his first wound. Turn is then passed back to Widow. Now, at this point, it's very difficult to see how Widow is going to pull this off. Really, the only hope is to get some kind of powerful recruit while also having enough stuff on board to pull off a red room and stack some extra wounds. Given that there was no recruit by Widow on this turn, it seems unlikely that that's going to happen. Captain America suicides into Miss America, followed by Widow declaring into Miss America, and clears the beefy 5-cost defender off of Mordo's side of the board, then passes. Another yellow placed into the resource row for Baron Mordo. And no recruit. The 7 defense on Widow effectively stopping any attempt at an attack from Mordo crossing the board. This stumble makes it appear as if Widow may have an opportunity to fight back. Phil Coulson hits the board, which would give all of the Shield affiliated characters the ability to hit protected back row characters, as well as being a decent ranged team attacker to couple with Black Widow. Kane is then recruited. The only basic location in the Patrick Lenehan build of Widow are reds, so that is what Widow is able to find. Formating with both Shield ranged attackers in the back row and Kane up front, Black Widow enters the main phase on turn 5. Kane is used to clear Ronin out of the way to allow a ranged attack by the 2 Shield agents into Baron Mordo. Another Vault enters the resource row on turn 7 for Baron Mordo, followed immediately by the Jungle Hunter. And this will provide the tools necessary for Mordo to finally strip the Quinjet off of Black Widow. The Predator ship location will grant the Jungle Hunter +3 attack and invade. So while attacking a back row character, he's not going to get stunned back. Prior to declaring any attacks, Mordo pays a yellow to Ronin's effect and accuses Training Grounds. This eliminates the dangerous resource that Kane found and puts the hopes of red rooming pretty much out of grasp for Widow for the rest of the game. Jungle Hunter's 9 attack is sufficient to strip the Quinjet off of Widow and gives her her 2nd wound. To finish out the main phase, Mordo pays a blue and discards the last card in Widow's hand. Rowing a Training Ground pulled off the top of the deck. Widow then recruits another Kane. And explores for the final basic red location in the deck. Buried quite deeply. Kane goes into Ronin, KOing both characters. Widow has no attacks. With the placing of a 9th resource and the recruiting of Thanos plus Zola forces that last red out of Widow's hand and puts Mordo in the position to stack 2 wounds on Widow this turn. Which is exactly what happens. Thanos heads into Widow with nothing in hand. Widow takes another wound, and a vault is used to pay the green to Thanos' ability to make that 1 wound into 2. At this point, Joe draws his last hand and declares game over and scoops. Thanks again to Versus Games Podcast and Team Attack for including us in the March Madness Tournament of Champions.